You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Darby. I first bumped into today's guest on the 8th green of St. Patrick's Links at Rosapenna in May 2024. He did me a solid that day, ensuring that my playing companion was knocked sufficiently off her competitive rhythm to allow me to have our 9-hole match on the following hole. During a recent return visit to Donegal, Chris Breen, the resort superintendent at Rosapenna, graciously welcomed me into his home to record a very enjoyable chat about his career to date, his reflections on 6 years at Rosapenna, the challenges of growing grass on the wild Atlantic Way, balancing golfer expectations alongside sympathetic and sustainable coexistence with nature, plus many other tangents and rabbit holes along the way. Many thanks to Chris for affording me some time, and to you for listening. We really do hope you enjoy our chat. Chris Breen, you're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. How are you?
Very good, Shane. Great to be on it and to have you here.
Well, thanks a million. Thanks for hosting me in your home. And we can actually see St. Patrick's over the wall there.
Yeah, I got lucky. Back in COVID, I got this house just as St. Patrick's still hadn't been opened. And we're looking over at 12 green, 13 fairway.
Fantastic. Well, listen, as you know, I was up at the Rosapenna Scratch Cup yesterday and thought it would be opportune to grab you for a podcast chat, which we've been talking about nearly for the last 12 months or so. Congratulations are obviously due to the winners. Alas, tied ninth after round one was as good as it got from me. The resort encountered an easterly wind yesterday. It wasn't great up on the ridge the Sandy Hills calls home, and I can't imagine it's any good for growing grass either.
No, definitely. Even looking at the scores yesterday, you can see the 3 under was a great return there. But everyone else, level par and above, kind of shows how difficult it was. And from my point of view, you wouldn't have thought the course was set up difficult. But just with that wind, it doesn't help you anywhere. But in terms of grass growing, no, we're still sitting at temperatures about 12, but moisture readings down at 7 and 8. So grass growing is minimal. And when you look, people going about setting up for tournaments, I think we cut the grass twice in 10 days before it. So it's just not there. It's very early in the year for a tournament for us in general, from my point of view. But I can understand from the resorts why it's done early. But the conditions for this time of year and for the winter we've had, I thought they were quite good in general.
Yeah, it's funny. I played 9 holes on arrival on Friday afternoon on Old Tom in the Valley, and it's funny. The greens in there, obviously being that much older, there was a distinct difference in pace. But even yesterday, the greens on the front line, they're only probably 15, 16 years old. But yeah, the maturity of the greens in the Valley really sort of, it was a joy to put on. And obviously you're closed during the winter on the other 2 courses, and the members just play Old Tom.
Yeah, we just Old Tom. And like you say, it's not easy to match them. The front nine has been distinctly different. And we think we're getting a bit closer, but there is a distinct difference in the pace. In terms of maintenance, the Valley greens, as we call them, they basically look after themselves. Like, I don't have to do a whole lot to them. In terms of water, maybe twice a year if we're lucky. They're just naturally a great bed net on them. Where the front nine, they're very much sand-based. There's a lot more meadow grass on them. That's what makes them that bit slower. But in terms of trying to catch up, we are refining it every year, and they're getting closer. But early in the year is more difficult with the seed head and that, and the meadow grass being in them. But hopefully over time, we'll get the percentages lower and lower. I think come the middle of the summer, they get a bit closer. But also with them being built, they're a lot more slopey. So they're a bit harder to speed up as well. If you look at 9, there's some big contours on it that are not in the Valley greens. Yeah. So it's easier to speed them up.
Although it's funny, I found a few spots on Friday afternoon on the Valley 9, and particularly external contour, that actually just bleeds into the green. There's some places you really don't want to be. You had a few funky pins out there, so I went not chasing pins, but I got a few approaches wrong. There's some wild contour just off the apron.
Yeah, and everything feeds away. If you miss by a small distance, you could end up a long, long way away. It's one thing that probably protects the course a bit. If you're on the wrong side of the hole, you're looking at big numbers. Don't get me wrong, 16 on Sandy Hills yesterday seemed to be really sum it up. The flag was in the lower tier of the green in the bunker. I think we had, in the seniors, we had 15 birdies, but we also had 17 worse than bogeys. So it kind of summed it up. If you were on the right side, you were fine.
But if you got above that pin position, in fact, my playing partner holed a very nice putt downhill for par in the afternoon. And I was slightly nearer putting for a par, which I missed. But you could de-green that and go in the bunker.
Definitely. And I knew that when I was picking it, to be fair.
Bastard.
I thought I left them easy in most holes, and I was like, fuck it, we'll put the flag up down here and we'll put the tee in the top.
Yeah.
And it did leave a small window. Yeah. But one of the reasons we were thinking about not doing it, I thought it was fine for the seniors, but for the junior, when you have a few handicaps like my own a bit higher, it's just not as easy to hit that smaller space. But it showed, I think, anybody that seemed to went long. I've heard a few stories, as you say, about de-greening it and a few putting into the bunker. But I thought the window of the landing zone was big enough.
It was, but you needed to hit.
I didn't expect the one to get as...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, listen, before we jump into the main conversation, and just as a corollary for what we just spoke about there, I just wanted to pick up on something we discussed last night, namely slope and course rating for the courses in Donegal. So you've assured me that the locals and members at Rosapenna believe well and truly the Sandy Hills is easier than the old Tom Morris course. Respective slope ratings of 123 for Old Tom Morris and 121 for Sandy Hills would beg to differ slightly. Now, my contention is that the slope for both is incorrect. It could just be that the slope system doesn't transpose to links golf so well. Your thoughts are appreciated.
Yeah, that's definitely my opinion. It doesn't translate. I think it's based more at the American or Parkland golf. I think in terms of bunkers, out of bounds and all, where we don't have much of that. But I think we're lucky as members, albeit they don't get as much play on Sandy Hills now. But once you get, it's the same as any course, you get used to playing it and you know where not to go. And I think that's where we find it a wee bit easier. If you look at yesterday, Sandy Hills is a much shorter golf course than the old course in terms of getting tee to green. Where if you get the wrong one in the old course, 1, 3, 5, 6, and all the way out in the valley are all straight into the wind. Where in Sandy Hills, you'd only ever have maybe 3 holes. If you get past we would always say the first 6, you're fine. If you have a decent score coming off them, you'll do well. Just in my opinion, I think you get more chances in Sandy Hills. I definitely do. I'd be very reasonably straight off the tee, so I don't put myself in much bother. Where the most greens in Sandy Hills, I can get with an iron comfortably. Where in the valley, I can't. If the one's into my face, 10, 11, 12, I'll be hitting a rescue or a wood for my second shot. Now, as I say, I'm not long, but in general, that's the difference for me.
And neither am I, but I guess the one thing with Sandy Hills, and again, it's a function of the extremeness of the site. It is a pretty extreme site, obviously up on the Dune Ridge. It strikes me as it's a links golf course best played through the air, which is a bit of an oxymoron. It actually doesn't have much of a ground game given the nature of the topography.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with it. If you look at Pat Ruddy's designs in the greens, everything's elevated. So if you're short at all, probably 9 times out of 10 it comes back. So you need to land it onto the green. And like you say, that defeats the purpose to a degree of links golf and what you're saying. And if the winds are up and you're flying the ball, you get into trouble. And it is quite a narrow site. And we've tried to widen it and make it more playable, more friendly. But I think St. Patrick's has really opened your eyes to Sandy Hills. St. Patrick's is just so wide. And I think it's made Sandy Hills look even narrower than what it actually is. I think if people play St. Patrick's first, they look at Sandy Hills and go, "Jeez, this is narrow." But
And look, I do understand that in many cases, you're basically hitting into U-shaped valleys, and actually the external contour of the fairway assists in funneling you. But if you miss that U-shaped valley, you're dead.
Oh yeah, you're into no man's. And I think that is the problem. So if you're anywhere remotely wild off the tee on Sandy Hills, it's a difficult golf course. There's no doubt about that. Like, as you say, if the ball kicks to the wrong side, you'll be blind for a start. You don't know where you're going, and you could be going any distance. Like. And as you say, because it could filter 50 yards one way. But as a championship course, I do think it's an excellent championship golf course for good golfers in general.
You know, Frank Jr. told me once upon a time that there are mysterious tees back in the middle of nowhere.
There is on Dunes that you would. I think I was here a couple of months before I ever found the 1 on 8.
Yeah. And
there's only 2 guys. One guy worked here, Matthew Coyle, and John Dolan were the only 2 people that I know have ever played off it. It's about a 180-yard carry to the fairway.
And where all of those back tee boxes put back in, not that they are, but if they were reinstated, how long would the golf course be? Because it's like 6-4 off what we played yesterday.
Well, definitely on 4 and 8 or 2, I can think straight off the top of my head, would add 120 yards straight away, and that's only 2 holes.
Yeah.
The 4th, like there's a tee box in the 4th that is actually right of the par 3 green. It's up on the, so you have to play straight over 3 green. To be fair, I don't know. It wasn't in my time. I don't remember Frank and him would know, but
yeah,
like it must have been mad because the landing zone is tiny.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get near the bend, the dog leg.
I think these were just affectations of Mr. Ruddy's imagination.
Yeah, I think so. Back in the time, Pat obviously did enjoy making difficult golf course and making it hard for what we call better players.
Yeah.
But I think that day has run its course to a degree.
We want a bit of fun and a bit of leeway to enjoy our golf.
Definitely. If you look at the handicaps in golf now, the average handicap's up well into double digits. So it's like there's going to be no enjoyment in that for them. The other thing I noticed in the par 3s, some Pat's tees in the par 3s are just enormously.
Yeah.
Like the 3rd there's one makes it 210.
Yeah.
But our prevailing wind, 90% of them will be straight into it.
Yeah.
I think we put the never the Irish closers here, we put the practice day on it.
Yeah.
And in my team, that's the only time it's ever been used.
Yeah.
I think we brought the tee up 70 yards that day.
Wow.
We actually put it onto the white tee then. The one got up, but that was the difference.
Yeah. Well, listen, listeners will notice from your accent and your brogue that you're a Donegal native. Ballybuffet, I believe.
Yeah. Originally from Ballybuffet. I mean, a golf family in general. Up in Ballybuffet in Shoreline. My granddad was one of the founders of it. And my uncle, Enda McMenamin, was a very good golfer. He was beating, I think, 3 West finals now.
Okay.
So golf was in the family in general, growing up in Ballybuffet.
Okay.
My mum was single digit handicapper. 4 of my uncles were down at 2.
And when did you start?
We played when we were kids.
Yeah.
So we did, but then when I started playing football and that, I didn't play then for, probably when I was about 16. I didn't play then for about 10 years.
Talking about football, like many in these parts, I believe that you're not only a former professional football, but a lifelong Celtic supporter. Before embarking on a career in a Grand Meet, you played domestic professional football for Finn Harps here in Donegal, a little bit with Shamrock Rovers in Dublin, and then went down south to Limerick.
Yeah, I grew up supporting Harps all my life, all my family. Went to Harps when I was 16. I played my first game, 2002, I think it was. Played, I think, near 200 games for them. I loved it at the time, to be fair. Ran into a few issues. I got a league medal in 2004, first division medal with them. Stayed in the Premier, relegated. There's a few money issues. Went to Shamrock Rovers in 2006. That was excellent, to be fair. I'd opened my eyes more to the professional side of it. Not knocking Finn Harps. It was a smaller club, just in general. Shamrock Rovers was massive structures in place. They had everything. Like. I always laugh about this. It was the first time I've ever seen a pay slip in my life. Paid by Harps, you didn't know what you were doing. But Shamrock I don't know what was going through. I just remember checks bouncing. But the Shamrock Rovers was great. It was up and down all the time. We were in Tolka Park at the time, so it suited me in the north side. So I stayed around Swords there and used to travel up and down. But then I went back to Finhurst for 3 years. And then in 2009, I don't remember now, I went to Limerick. So the reason I took me to Limerick, Pat Scully was my manager in Shamrock Rovers. He went to Limerick and I went there. Again, my dad's from Limerick, so he was a Limerick fan growing up. Okay. So he was delighted to see me going down there. And it went well. I only stayed there for 6 months. But I loved my time at the start. But I was probably doing a bit of going out and partying not too much at the time. And it just caught up with me, basically. And I probably wasn't in the best place headways. I was struggling. I was just down all the time. And I thought to myself, I need to do something here. Because I was playing football full time. And people have this notion that professional football is what you see on TV. But in Ireland, it wasn't then. It was the money and that was good, but it wasn't a lavish lifestyle, shall I call it. And at the time, we were still training in the evenings, so I was bored during the days. And I was like, what am I going to do here? I was just in a bad rut at the time. And I just thought to myself, I'm going to make a change at it. And I decided then, I started looking at courses and college things and that. And I always loved football. I always loved it in general. And I thought, you know what, I'd like to stay in it. And I found a course in college in CSN, which was greenkeeping. And I don't know, I kept looking at it, and I started buying a few golf books. Now, to be fair, when I went into it for football. I went into working football pitches, not golf. And it was in about June, and I'd really hit the bottom. I was suffering from a lot of anxiety and that. And I just thought to myself, you know what, this is it. And I went to CSN College on open day, and I met the 2 lecturers on it, and just went from there, basically. I went down for an interview, but 2 weeks later, and I enrolled in the 2-year course, the level 6. And I started the following September, and I gave up football that September, just there and then. And done the year in CSN in Cork. And that's basically where it came from. But the football, I did miss it. There was one time actually I went back and I signed back for Finharps. I was getting phone calls from 3 and 4 clubs every few months to see what I was doing. Was I going to play again? I had this notion in my head I wanted to, but I didn't at the same time. I was like, I didn't want to go back into that kind of rut I was in. And I was really enjoying the actual go back to work thing. So eventually, Felix Healy, who from Derry, kept at me about Harps, and I said, right, fuck it, I will. And I signed. And what I done then was I only went to 1 training. And then a job offer came up to do my work experience from the college in Cork in Sweden. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going. This gets me, that was basically my escape to get out and not have to go back to the football. Because the way it was, I kind of had this anxiety thing built up in my head that it was nervous going back to football for some reason. And I wish now, looking back, it's easy to say I wish I had went back to it as well along with. But at the same time, the career path worked out.
Guess you're a long time not playing football, so.
Definitely. And it was only last year I went back. I went back playing amateur football here in Donegal for KG. And I do a wee bit of coaching now with an under-12 local team. And I took a under-16 team to the Foyle Cup last year. So trying to put something back in now. But whenever I say I play now, I've only played at a Saturday level. It's just for fun. When you're 40 now, the body just doesn't recover like it used to.
So I believe you were, after Sweden, you were in with Reading Football Club, obviously looking after the grounds at the Majeski Stadium.
The Majeski Stadium, aye.
How did you first get the start in golf course agronomy?
Basically, so through the CSN, I used to do 1 or 2 days a week in Douglas Golf Club with Peter Morris. Peter was excellent to me, to be fair to him. I loved it down there. Him and Michael Lehan were wild good to me, to be fair. Michael used to collect me and bring me out and in for the thing, and Peter Morris let me do everything. Like some of the guys that were in the course for me were divoting all the time. He had me in mowers and all from day one, which was excellent opportunity from where I was going. I was there for just over a year. And then, as I say, Dave Hickey, who's actually in charge of Westport now, was in Sweden. And I happened to send him an email to do, because I had 6 months experience to do. And he was in Vallentuna, outside Stockholm. And as I say, I was trying to just get away from the football thing. Yeah. And he offered me a role from, it was the 1st of May until the end of the season. And I went out there and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And again, it was all seasonals. So there was a lot of Irish guys there, Lithuanians and that. But it was Dave and a Welsh guy running 3 courses. That was it. Nobody else basically had much experience. So again, you got a great experience on everything. So you were using every machine going. So from a breeding ground, it was excellent. And Dave he loved me saying, had a way with words. So he taught you a lot of things. He was a thick man, shall I call it? He'd laugh at that. But he taught you a lot, to be fair. Like, he was excellent. Like, you didn't step out of line too many times with him.
Yeah. And having worked a little bit on the pitch maintenance side, and also then on the golf side, what would you think the main differences are between the pitch care and I guess looking after sports turf for golf?
There's a huge difference at the level I was at now. As I said, I always wanted to go with the football. And then I was the head man on Hatchford Brook, and I just seen an advert for the second in charge at Reading. And I thought, you know what, maybe that's a chance. And Adam Grantham was in charge there at the time, and he offered it to me within 2 hours. I went down and met him at the Majeski. And I just remember going into the stadium and thinking, geez, this is cool. But when you're there, then he was only there a couple of weeks, and you're kind of going, this is really monotonous. It was the same thing. You didn't notice the stadium at all anymore. But on agronomy wise, what you were saying, the big difference in football, they're chalk and cheese. Like, they've all the money in the world. The pitches are built to the best standards you'll ever see. They're ripped out every year. So the inputs and that, they don't matter. They put so much nitrogen on. It's just all about green and white lines for a presentation point of view. Where in golf, you don't get away with that. Like, you're constantly looking at how to improve the soil and that. Where to them, they're ripping off the top 100 mil every year. So they can't really damage it, if you know what I mean. And the budgets are just through the roof. Like, you know, we had everything. We had undersoil heating, we had grow lights, we had grow sheets. Money was never an object. And I don't mean this to sound like you're knocking groundsmen, because they do unbelievable jobs. But in some points at the top end, it's nearly hard to get it badly wrong. And I don't mean that to sound any bit derogatory. It's just they have absolutely everything there in place. Now, the rugby was sore. We had London Irish there as well. The scrums and that from London Irish were sore on the ground. So that was one thing I did notice in comparison. You don't get that in the Premier League teams now. I think Brentford had it.
Or on the golf course.
Thank God. Albeit, if you've seen my divots, they're not a lot different. But the football, I actually, there's some days I look at it now and go, I look around the golf course and I'm like, geez, I wish I stayed at football. From
less headaches.
Yeah. And less stress at times with it in general.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't have the unlimited budgets. There was 6 of us at the stadium. There was 18 in the training grounds.
Yeah.
You know, people find that mental. We had 6 full-time people looking after a square football pitch.
And correspondingly, right, so you're looking after 1,200 acres here and have been since 2019 in Rosapenna. How many staff have you got?
We've been increasing it this year. So we're going to have 11 on St. Patrick's.
Yeah.
And we're going to have hopefully between 16 and 18 on Rosapenna. But that's a lot more than what we've had in the past.
Okay.
Which does help, but as you say, it's a huge span of ground.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive.
Like, what would your fairway acreage be across the 63 holes? Any idea?
We've 24 hectares in St. Patrick's alone.
Okay.
But St. Patrick's, as you know, is massive,
yeah,
scaled. But in terms of fertiliser, even like the fertiliser fairways, we're looking at 5.5 to 6 ton. Do you know what that would do other places for couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with the build and the scale is that big, everything increases.
Yeah.
In terms of outputs.
Top dressing and
For us to do fairways is nearly impossible. Like we try and do areas, selected areas, landing zones and that, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's just huge.
Yeah. As I've said, you've been at Rosapenna since 2019. How did that particular opportunity to move back to Donegal materialise?
I was down in Mayo at the time, and I just the guy that was here, Paul, went to Donegal Golf Club, and I just remember seeing the advert, and I applied direct to Frank at the time because that was sounds really cringeworthy. It was always my aim trying to get back here. Of course, I always loved it here. Like, to be fair, like,
what's not to like?
Not to like about it.
Look at that view.
Yeah.
Well, mind you, when you can't see it out the window.
Like, while I'm from an hour from here, my parents have had a mobile home here since the late 90s. So we've always been down around here. And I've always loved the area. But at the time, I'd only moved back from England. I was in down in Mayo for the year in Cairn, and I was hopeful of getting it. But with only having a year on links, I was more hoping.
Well, here's one for you that you mentioned that, and something that I guess a fellow member of mine said in relation to something, and somebody was going somewhere that didn't have any previous links experience. But grass is grass, right? I mean, obviously, getting green grass in a stadium and presenting either a parkland golf course or a links golf course, your inputs are going to change. But grass is grass, yeah?
Yeah, fundamentally, it's the same principles. Like, you might reduce them in that, and I think it's the same across the board. Like, people have this mentality that cool season and warm season, one can't do the other. But fundamentally, it's the same principles. You just increase them or lower them in general. Like, I don't see why a parkland manager can't take on a links. You'll learn very quick. If you asked all the links greenkeepers now, I don't think too many of them will go back to parklands in terms of the weather, the dry ground, or leaves. You think, like, we're nearly lucky in the autumn. But in terms of the agronomy, I think you do catch it. Yes, your inputs go down and you're more sand-based, but fundamentally it's the same.
Obviously slightly different with warm season grasses or warm season climates, and that you've got the phrase mowing and all that stuff. It's the stuff that will be different.
Yeah, what you do in parklands, you just don't do it as much.
Okay.
Where some people still would do, we don't do any verticutting now, but some do scarify still. So the principles are still the same. Like, we would do more grooming, so we don't go into the ground at all. So in theory, it's very, very similar. The crossover is definitely not what people make out.
In terms of your sort of annual renovations, for want of a better word, but presumably, I noticed you'd certainly top dressed the greens on Old Tom and actually Sandy Hills as well.
Sandy Hills, yeah.
Would you core anything like that, or
no? The mad thing with that top dressing should have been gone, basically.
Yeah.
But for us, we've had
no rain.
Too dry. I know, rain is unheard of for us. Like. So other than that sand should have been disappeared. But we try and do it. Look, I got lucky for the last number of years when Rosapenna was slightly quieter when I started. So we got away with pot tining greens and seeding that way, which is brilliant for strike rates and that, but it is a lot more disruptive. Now with the numbers have increased massively here, that we no longer have those opportunities now. There's just too many golfers here because the complaints do come in with certain practices. And I think from a golfing point of view, a lot of people, it's what they see. If they see top dressing, automatically that's a problem.
Yeah.
Where to me, it doesn't really affect it that much, to be fair. If you watch the ball, it actually doesn't deviate or anything.
Well, I guess that's the differentiation between the visual and the performance.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, or if we don't understand something maybe as well as we think we do, we're more driven by the visual.
Yeah, and that's 100%.
Not that I know very much, but ultimately all I'm looking for is a putting surface that the ball stays on the ground and if you hit it on the right line at the right pace, it goes in.
It goes in, and you know exactly that. And I think, as you say, visual, it's a huge thing. I think the minute people see sand, they automatically think this is bad, and it goes in. Golf's a huge mental game at the end of the day. I think once it goes into your head, it's a problem.
The other funny part of it is, obviously depending upon the time of year, the focus, I'm sure members at Rosapenna are no different to members everywhere else. Their focus at the moment is going to be on the greens. And that, once we get a bit of heat and a bit of rain, that will then turn into, Jesus, the rough is awful. Greens are fine now, and it's the same merry-go-round on a yearly basis.
Every single year.
It's almost as if people have lobotomies every year.
Yeah. The year it really showed up was the COVID years. Our rough in the COVID years went mental because we didn't have golf early in the year.
Yeah.
And that was when you really seen what can happen with the roughs, because that really did get punishing. And I think you really appreciate golfers then in the winter.
Well, particularly that year, I mean, I sort of recall, that strip of rough that kind of runs down the middle of the valley line? That's pretty choppy ground anyway, and I think somebody's been in there at some point in time chunking and whatnot. So it's a mixture of chunked stuff and that mossy crap that you get here, which is just ball eating.
Yeah,
and throw some marrow on top. One of my playing partners got a little bit off piste on the 18th yesterday, and we were in there, and I sort of noticed, geez, this is an awful lot sparser than I thought it was previously, which might have something to do with, because I remember I was in there in 22 going, what's going on here?
Yeah, because we did start to thin it out.
Yeah.
So it was actually Paul McGinley who, remember we had the event, he was out strumming at nights.
Yeah.
The nights before and all, trying to widen areas.
Yeah.
And the following winter was when we really started profit hopping on Amazon, the roughs.
Yeah.
Which has helped massively.
Yeah.
Another thing we done as well, we moved some of the tee boxes. So on the likes of 10, for example, the left of 10 used to be basically no-go area. We put the members off the ladies' tee for the whole winter 2 years ago. So then it made your line of the shot left of the bunkers.
Yeah.
And everyone tramped it for the whole winter. Now it's an excellent place to go.
Yeah.
So what we've tried to do is move the tees in the winter so the members are in places that they never would have been. And they're tramping all the ground, and it's making the rough.
They're doing all the work for you.
Which is great. But they don't even realise it. Because once you shorten a hole, people don't mind.
Are they aware of this?
They weren't aware of the theory of it. But we were actually reconstructing the 10th tee at the time, so it was a good excuse to do it.
You're here the last 7 years. In reflecting on that time, what are the big changes you've seen? Obviously, more visitors.
The visitors have been huge. Look, would like to think that Rosapenna, Old Tom and Sandy Hills have improved quite a bit, to be fair. St. Patrick's has changed the landscape, to be fair. It's brought a different clientele completely, and the numbers, it's really raised. You're even in a different market now, shall we call it? Then there's a different market coming. But where we used to see in Sandy Hills, in general, we would have had quieter afternoons. That has now changed completely, because very few are coming here and just playing St. Patrick's. St. Patrick's is bringing them here. But 90% are playing at least 2, if not 3. That's certainly, the numbers has been a huge change. And because of that, we've had to change machinery. When I came here, we only had 2 fairway moors in that. So 1 for each course. Where with the numbers now, we have 5 in St. Patrick's, 3 in Rosapenna on each course at a time. Because we have to, it's no more than yesterday, for example. The light got up at, it was 6:15. And the golfers were at 2:45. Yeah. That's now all summer. So we had to get out in terms of machinery. We had to get new machinery in so we could get in front. So the numbers have changed, the machinery, our staff has changed. From my time starting, there's now only, I think, 3 people left from the day I started.
But what's nice as well, you seem to have the guys from Colossus Stefan you've brought up here as well, in terms of just maintaining that link with the guys in Cork.
Yeah, Dan Crowley is still the head of the college in Cork from my time there. He's been excellent. So I try and keep, and if we can, it's a bit hard to get people to come up here from Cork, as one of the issues So when
It's
we
a bit hard to get Cork people out of Cork. Full stop.
But even when we had the Legends Tour, we had a great one actually. We got a great picture where we had, I think we had 26 staff for that event. And 16 had been through Coláiste Stefan Nefa, which was excellent return. For whatever reason, I don't know if I was the first, but it was the first person I knew of that went down to it and done the course for the next couple of years. I think there was 10 guys from Ballbofay, all done it. And some of them are still in. There's one of the guys works in Adare Manor. One of the guys is a head greenkeeper in Sweden. There's a young guy, Kevin, who was here for a while, was out in Portugal working on Sergio's new course doing the growing. So it's not compared to the Thomas Edit. Yeah. So it's been great that way. And we have a young guy out in Chicago. Can't remember the club now where the President's Cup is. He's in Medina since last year. And he's going to Cyprus next year. So we've some great links that way. The more we can get out of the colleges, the better.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, you want people that have qualifications and have an interest, along with the general labour.
But maybe I'm imagining this. You had some Ukrainians on staff as well at some point.
Yeah, again, the way the influx went in the Downings in general, this area just became so expensive for housing and all. We just couldn't get people to move here, pretty much. One of the hotels locally had 90 or whatever Ukrainians in it.
Yeah.
We now have 13 working for us.
Fantastic.
And there's actually 6 in St. Patrick's this is their 3rd season.
Okay.
And they've been excellent.
Yeah.
The language barrier was hard at the start. But there's 3 guys now have actually...
You surely have improved your Ukrainian.
I always bound to them about 2 languages and I can't even speak Irish.
What?
But they've been excellent. Like, people ask me regularly how they get on. The work ethic and that has been brilliant. Mad for hours. And look, what's going to happen in the future, I don't know. Like, I think that'll all come to a stop someday, and what we'll do then we'll have to see. But in terms of working, like, there's 3 of them now. You just tell them you're doing fairways, they know exactly where they're going, what they're doing. Time-wise, not a problem. Never late. Look, staff's been an issue in general. I think the younger staff is so hard. It's so hard to get people into the industry in general. Like, I think people look at it early mornings up here with wet weather. You know, I think it is a problem trying to get people into this line of work. And I don't know where we're going to go. Look, I do personally think the robotic thing is going to become huge. I think from a sustainable point of view, environment and all, I do think it is the right way to go in the long run. People will argue it's hurting jobs, hurting staff. I don't see it that way at all. Like, at the end of the day, we need a massive amount of seasonal staff anyway. We don't, I mean, we can't get the numbers anyway. So it's not replacing anyone. It's actually just making...
Like, I guess the other way of looking at it is that it's actually providing the team with time to do value added stuff, as opposed to it's additive as opposed to taking something away.
Yeah, definitely. Same as anything. I think you have to go with changes. Changes happen in general. And as you say, we've become massive on the general tidiness, where we try to keep the small things neat and tidy.
Yeah.
And they're the things that get overlooked when you don't have the numbers.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I said it to you off air. I mean, it's always those little things, you know, and something I've noticed up here over the last number of years. You know, at the start of the day, there'll be no golfing litter on the tee box, has some broken tees, which, you know, it's simple stuff in terms of setup. Yeah. It's just, you know, you change the hole, you change the pots, and you pick up the tee.
It's a massive thing, but if you don't have the numbers, they're the things that get missed very quickly. And it was something that I got from Andy Robertson in Ballyluffin. Andy was always excellent. I always noticed it anytime I went up there. That's brilliant. I remember asking him, and he used to always say, get your general tidiness right. As he calls it, make sure your homework's good. And people notice it. And they do. Because I remember chatting to another guy, Lee Strutt, and he said 3 things: greens, bunkers, and general tidiness. Where if you asked some younger people to go, oh, greens, fairways, tees are important, to me, general tidiness should be way up the ladder. Way up. Because people do notice, as you say, if you go to a place and there's rubbish in the first tee, There's broken tees everywhere. If markers are all faced the wrong way, it just becomes, you're kind of automatically thinking, but they don't take much.
But look, to be fair, it's probably my obsessive compulsiveness. I will generally clean tees as I go if I'm waiting on play, just in my own club.
Yeah.
'Cause I just think it's untidy. It's a lack of. It's not that people aren't aware they haven't done it, but they just haven't been asked to do it.
Yeah, and I think as you say that is right, because even with members, if you look, people say, "Oh, that's not my pitch mark. That's the visitors." We get that all the time. It's the visitors.
It's always the juniors, though.
We don't have money, to be fair. We've very few young members here. But in general, like, you'll see pitch marks, and I'll be like, "Well, there was no visitors out yesterday." But I don't think it is fully an ignorance thing, to be fair. I think it's just some people just don't see it. It seems to be a thing in the ladies' game too. Oh, we don't hit the ball high enough to make a pitch mark, so they don't even look.
Yeah.
But I think I would be one to say I think etiquette in golf has got worse in the last number of years. I think in general, if you look at, we put up some directional signs and ropes and that. Even yesterday watching it, like, I would say over 50% of the field went straight past them on 9 and up around the green. Like, I'm not doing it to try and make it awkward for anyone. It's just, we don't have any growth at the minute hardly. We're very, very little. It's just sore on the surrounds and all that. As you know from being up here, around the greens, there's not a lot of room. And if you take yesterday, for example, 200 and something people just going around the 1 metre area.
Yeah.
And we do the same in the winter. But the amount of people now just bypass them is just incredible. Like, it's the same as the practice rounds. I understand golfers on the practice rounds on Sandy Hills on Friday, the amount of times yesterday morning that I found 4 divots as opposed to scramble was incredible.
Yeah.
Do you know, if you want, I have no problem with somebody doing it, but at least put the divots back. Like, they were just sitting 6 yards in front of you. You know, I think there'll be small things, and I'm not blaming new people coming into the game, because a lot of people that are down at these levels, scratch golfers, are not new to the game. I just think it's something that's kind of...
I think it's a consumptive element. It's somebody else's job. That's
the greenkeepers
that's your job.
Yeah.
You know, so whether it's rigging a bunker or it's fixing your pitch mark and or 2 or 3 others. You'd almost rather people didn't repair a pitch mark if they're going to do it wrong.
If they're going to do it badly. I'd be that exact opinion, because it's worse.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think people in general, I just don't get... If there's a couple of signs and it gives you an extra 10 yards walk, I wouldn't do it anywhere. Do you know what I mean? I don't understand that mentality.
These are the very same people, presumably, that don't drop their trolley back to the trolley bay in the supermarket.
The door.
Yeah. Just abandon it there.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, we've gone off on a tangent there, as can happen. Frank mentioned to me yesterday that some of your fellow greenkeepers in Donegal have had to deal with an outbreak of fusarium and dollar spot. You've managed to avoid it here pretty much?
To a degree, yeah. We got lucky enough. We had some disease, right? We got a bad touch of dollar spot on the fairways and that in St. Patrick's. Look, I'm not one of these people that says I don't use fungicides and that. We do put out 2 a year. And to be fair, look, we can call it a bit of luck. I happened to be going on honeymoon. So the day before I left, I sprayed it in St. Patrick's on the greens. Or just the greens. We done the greens in the 3 courses. I just done it for myself because I was away for 2.5 weeks. And I think 2 days after I left, that hot weather came in and the mist. And there's just no clearing the dew and that off the greens. Well, they did, but it just came straight back in on top.
Yeah.
But luckily for us, the greens held on. But to be fair, I have a few pictures that I can show, is just the line where the fungicide stops is just incredible to see the difference. You know, so some people don't use them. I'm delighted I did use it, I'm not going to lie. But it's because it's not nice. It's a long winter in general when you have problems.
Well, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Take it every day. I would say that in all walks of life. But it's, as I say, in general, the country got a bad hit. It's not just Donegal.
Yeah.
The West Coast got it from the storms and that as well. Like, but I think greenkeeping's getting harder in general, with probably for the right reasons. All chemicals are going to be banned. But it does make it very, very difficult in terms of the fungicides are all legal. Not all legal, some of them. There's still legal ones there.
But in terms of customer, member, visitor expectations, how do we go about educating them to the fact that when they're watching the PGA Tour or whatever it is on a week-to-week basis on Sky Sports, that actually what they're looking at is a golf course that's looking to peak for that particular week, and that actually to expect conditions from a presentation and play perspective at their own course on a daily and weekly basis, and that actually what they're looking at is a living organism that has to be managed through the seasons. And, we spoke earlier on about the expectation of the greens need to be this, the bunkers need to be that, without any real understanding of what you guys go through.
Yeah, what people say. I would say this to anybody. You go out in your own garden at home and walk over and back it 50 times. Do you see what happens? So why are we different? If traffic's soaring, not growing.
Anyone can grow grass.
Anybody can do it. But I think the point you make about expectations is massive. Like, the expectations have gone huge. And one place you really see it is in the winter. I think people expect winter conditions now, same as the summer. Where before, years ago, machines would have went away in November and you wouldn't have seen them again to March, and nobody batted an eyelid. But now people are expecting golf 12 months of the year. And without the chemicals in that to try and help, it's not going to be possible going forward to have perfect conditions, and that's part and parcel of it. But lowering the expectations while you have the high green fees, that's going to be the challenge. Like, if people are paying 20 quid, you're not going to say anything. If people are paying 200, 300, 400, whatever it is, I think the expectation goes with it. But where that line...
But I guess it's just trying to get across that, perfect conditions and conditions perfect for golf are two completely different things.
Completely. As you should. Like, next weekend is the prime example. For 4 days of the year, or given a week, Augusta will be absolutely mint. But if people have seen the pictures...
That's the Augusta Flower Show.
Flower Show, where they have the flowers in refrigerators to pick them at the perfect times. People don't see that side of it. Like, you go to Augusta outside of the season, it's closed. There's nobody there. It's the same as the open venues now. They're picking them for the week.
But as on a complete aside, somebody said something to me yesterday, and we had been talking about, or somebody had been talking about Augusta, but they were making the comparison with St. Patrick's, actually. Oh, it's wide open, it's a big American style. And they're going, well, hang on a second. If you can't see the fact that there's no rough at Augusta, and there's little or no rough at
Adair Manor, for even.
Yeah, correct. But actually, depending on the wind and depending on the flag position and where the flag is in the green, there are places on that big wide fairway of 120 yards you can't be, because you can't get anywhere near it. But they just don't see.
That's like a mentality thing. Like, something different is not a bad thing. Like, St. Patrick's is totally different, I would say, to most links courses in this country. But I think it's excellent, and it's a lot of fun to play. Not everything has to be the exact same.
Yeah. It's been closed all winter.
Yeah, but it is a 6 months golf course, because it is...
But it is open next Friday.
Yeah. And the weather will turn, guaranteed.
Yeah.
From the blue skies.
How have you wintered over the 2024-25 winter? A couple of serious storms.
The storms, we do put up fences, breakers that are about 12 foot high to protect the coastal greens. And they've made a huge difference. The disease was one thing. We've also got the beach protected now, which has made a huge difference to the sand coming up. So there are huge changes that have happened in the last number of years. Like, I think it was 2020. We must have lost 6, 7, I think up to 8, 9 metres in areas of the dunes from the storms, and the sand, just everything then exposed, blew up onto the golf course. It's an absolute torture. Then for grass, 14 was a prime example. Just there was sand cover below everywhere. Like. So the fences and the coastal erosion work has made a huge difference. Huge. In terms of the course itself, it has weathered quite well. We do have a few issues with grubs and that from the new build, but it's more in low pockets. It's not in big areas, at least.
Yeah. And I think I detected some recent resodding on some of your grass pathways, both at Sandy Hills, and in fact there may be some new paths on Sandy Hills that seem to be going in a different direction than I thought on the back nine at one stage. Well, actually, as I'm on the subject of grass pathways, do you think it's a trend to be embraced, endured, or eliminated? Particularly irrigated grass pathways?
No. Look, each course to their own. It's not for here. You know, I think there's a fine line. It comes back to costs and upkeep. Those pathways cost the same sort of, they're maintained like a football pitch. So there's huge money, huge build costs. And I'm not sure.
I think it could be considered conspicuous consumption. Look what we can do.
Look what we can do. There's definitely a degree to that. And I think it is a real fault of the leader. One does it, two does it, everyone ends up doing it. But the cost of irrigation and all is huge. And water sources is going to become a big problem down the line. And I think the mentality here, look, there's a fine line to a degree as well. Like, I'm not a fan of real rough pathways you take your trot over and it's bobbling and bouncing. So there is a thin line to it. But I actually agree with what the guys here think, Frank and John, on that. I wouldn't like somebody to come in and their first comment is, I love your paths. Do you know, I would nearly find that
something.
Yeah. And I think that's what I do here, but it's nothing against the golf course, but that's what you hear. Oh, their paths are brilliant. You're kind of going, you're on a fucking golf course, you're gonna go for a walk the beach, you know what, like it's...
Not generally talking about a playable area.
Yeah. So, and as I say, the upkeep and costs are massive, like, they really, really are. In terms of cutting, fuel, person to do it, fertilizer, because they do take a lot of wear, to be fair. But there is a fine line to that and a rough...
But you know, somebody said to me recently, we were talking about grass paths, and they suggested that some rankings lists think highly of grass paths. They're going, with respect to those ranking lists, you're ranking something that doesn't affect golf.
Oh.
Why is it even there?
Yeah.
You know, it's about as useful as ranking a golf course on showers and car parking facilities.
It's totally outside of it. Like, I got lucky. I played Cypress Point last year. And I walked...
Name dropper.
I walked through from the first green to the second tee, then the second tee to the fairway, and I walked through grass that was way above my ankles. So, you know, it's kind of like... So, you know, I didn't come in and go, oh, I had to walk through long grass to get to the second fairway. It's kind of going, this place is amazing. So it's... I do get the thing, I would hate for it to take away from any golf course. And the one thing I will say about St. Patrick's and that, the pathways are very natural on it. It'll never have buggies. The buggies are really, really sore on paths. Extremely, like, which is a problem on the old and Sandy Hills. They're not irrigated, they never will be. So they do get really worn. And that's the reason we change them up most years. And the other thing, we'll never have them as a flat. They will have ridges and contour to try and tie into the ground.
Yeah. Well, listen, as I mentioned earlier on, the Rosapenna Scratch Cup were on yesterday. What does the week or so in advance of an event like that look like from your perspective? So you might just walk us through the main components in preparing for an invasion of, I think, 132 higher level hackers to the resort.
Look, again, this week's not too bad because it's so early in the year. As I said earlier, we only cut twice. We rolled the greens a bit more. Other than that, we wouldn't. You know, there's a thin line again between pushing it too early in the year when you don't have growth. It's a real coin toss. We got lucky with the weather. As I say, if you look, we've still areas that don't have full grass covering. The tees are still quite sparse in that. So in terms of cutting and maintenance, if this in the summer, it would be a different story. We'd have a lot more. We'd be cutting tees 3 times a week for it. Be cutting the greens 4 days out of 5 and rolling them. We'd probably have a lot more numbers in. Like yesterday, we had 6 people in, 3 in each course. In the summer, if that was that, we'd probably have 7 on each course. There's a thin line. Like, the course could be better than it was yesterday. I think it's good for the time of year. But when you're bringing these people here, you would like to have it at its best. But it's just not possible completely. I think
I think the answer there is have it later, but that's not going to happen.
Again, with the resort being green themed and orientated, and it is, to be fair, it is a warm up for the West. It's to give people a chance to play before, because it is real. There's not many. Just
for the record, I'm nowhere near that standard, so I'm not going to be playing at the
You're
West.
not getting in.
But I know some people that will be playing at the West, if that counts.
Yeah, because I always find it difficult for them. It's not easy for us, to be fair to them. Like, it's hard to push a course that early in the year without causing effects down the line.
Well, Stu, their new greenkeeper, our head greenkeeper, is going to find out how that works out.
Yeah, and good luck to Stu. It'll be an eye opener. I think this weather here is helping, definitely. And I was down there at Christmas. It was in excellent condition, and the changes look great. So it'll be good for the West. If they get this kind of weather, it'll be a phenomenal tournament. You see them back on the greens, the new ones and that. So it's a great effort, to be fair, to turn it around that quickly.
Yeah. So in thinking about the 1,200 acres of linksland that you and the team manage, you might identify and characterise the distinct habitats that you manage on a site-wide basis, and perhaps how different treatment is required to present both playing surfaces and off-piste areas at their best.
The off areas, we try and leave them alone, as natural as possible. And as we were saying off earlier, sometimes that's not great, because your ball goes offline, it'll never be seen again. Like. In terms of around here, we try and work as best we can with nature in general. As you would have seen yesterday, we don't spray off the roughs, we don't touch the roughs or anything, so there's some, we'll call it flora, weeds to other people. But they're coming, I think we have to embrace some of it. That it's changing. It's in, you've natural habitats out there for them.
That mossy stuff, what's that?
It's exactly what it is. It's the wet climate. If we were to take that back with iron and that, you'd be down to bare sand. Yeah. The problem they may have is rabbits dig it back. The weaker it is.
But I have visions when as you know, I had Angela Moser on last year, and she was describing her first visit. Huh?
My next door neighbour.
Yeah. She was describing her first visit to St. Patrick's site back in whatever it was, 2016 or 15, whenever they had their first schlep around, and literally disappearing in waist high to the moss.
Yeah, there's still areas out there. You walk 20 metres off some of those semi-rough bands, and you'll bowl be into your waist. But again, there's not a lot you can do with it. I just think that's part and parcel of don't go. It's wide enough. There's plenty of areas to hit. But I think to some people, they want to hit their ball literally anywhere and find it. I don't think that's feasible from a nature point of view. You don't want that. The less areas we can touch, the better.
I'm just wondering, if we take, for example, the front line of Sandy Hills, which is obviously on the ridge above the valley course predominantly, and the valley itself, I would think, if I'm correct in saying that obviously you're more exposed up on the ridge. So how does that difference in terms of elevation and maybe exposure to the elements, how does that affect?
A huge difference. You would have seen yesterday even, the valley is in very good shape. It's closer to the sea. The elevated holes 4, 5 and 6 are our weakest. Sea sprays, everything coming in, they're just so exposed to the wind. And it's the same every year. Hopefully we do have some grubs and that's a problem. 4 fairway, 5 fairway especially, is just struggling to get back in it. But it's a combination then. The disease, the sea spray, the wind, then it's weaker. Then we have rabbits, badgers digging. And that is the problem. There must be 100 rabbit holes in the 5th fairway. Yeah. So how do we combat it? We have to work with nature as well. It's their home also. But it is awkward. we'd like to think we will get stronger every year. This year, as we spoke about earlier, it's been had bad winter for a lot of courses. We got lucky in terms of it's those few fairways is the worst we've got. If that was in a green, it would be a different animal. But where we spray the fungicide and that on the greens, that is it. Like it's not feasible or anything to do that to fairways. So it's just a matter, like, we could try and fence them, but you're talking 200 yards at a time. Like, it's just, again, it's...
Yeah. And how about, I mean, quite a lot of water falls out of the sky in these parts. But, I mean, you said for the last month or so you've had a day or two around.
We had a guy start just over a month ago.
Yeah.
And it's unheard of. He has had 1 day of rain in Downings since he started.
But how challenging is that then from a water management perspective, and obviously access to irrigation water, resort wide?
It's massive. Like, last year was unbelievably wet up until end of January. But it's been really dry since then. We use moisture management tools and that, and we have fairways down on 6% already. While it's great in the wet seasons, it's extremely challenging this time of year. In regards to St. Patrick's, we have 300,000 litre irrigation tank, but it takes 2 days to refill it. So we don't have a massive water source at the moment. Now we will go down the lines of we'll have to bore for more water sources. But we just simply can't water everywhere. We have to pick and choose areas. As I say, we're lucky we're not open yet. So it's easier to manage wear and traffic. In terms of machinery, we just stay away from certain areas.
Tell John to keep off the golf course with his Jeep.
It's cheap. But you won't tell that to Frank. Frank Senior is just, no, he'll go where he wants to go. But in terms of water's become a huge issue in general. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah, ideally I'd love to have water everywhere. But at the same time, I think links courses are meant to be played on hard, somewhere near firm and fast. It's like it's meant to be played on that type of ground. Like, you don't want balls stopping on fairways. With St. Patrick's, it would be different because it's new. We need water to grow it in properly. Like the 2023 drought, we burnt 90% of the golf course. So last year we got quite lucky with the rainfall we had. We actually needed that because we'd done a lot of seeding, because some of the fairways just...
But technically speaking, you're probably still consider, even now, entering the 5th season with St. Patrick's, you're still growing it in.
Yeah, to a degree. People will always say, now it should be 5 years and you're now considered mature enough to be fully, should be perfect. But because of 23, we basically went back 2 years to start growing all new seedlings again.
Yeah.
Because we went from 9% coverage down to about 10%, some holes.
Well, I mean, the whole surface desiccated and...
Yeah, well, it was incredible at the time to look at. Like, it was brilliant. It was when it started to grow back, or not grow back, that's when it started to look really patchy. That's when you really would have appreciated the full irrigation. But I do think there is a line again where let them burn off and play as it was meant to be played. And I think it goes to the open venue, the RNA and that, like, there's some open venues now, they're as green as any parkland when the open's there. I'm not sure that's what you'd like to see going forward.
I guess when Morikawa won in St. George's back during COVID, and the pros like that F word, fairness, and my understanding is that they watered the shit out of the fairways to make sure they didn't get their
the bounces,
nasty
the kicks.
bounces, which is part of the game.
Yeah, that's like, it's pandering
to
people. Like, at the end of the day, it's only, they're there for 4 days. This course is here for everyone to enjoy. And I think links golf is meant to be played on the ground.
Here's one for you. I mean, given that at least 2 of the St. Patrick's construction team have previously worked as greenkeepers, I'm interested to learn how sympathetic the shaping on St. Patrick is from a maintenance standpoint. I suppose in particular, I'm interested to hear how challenging Clyde Johnson's 11th green is from a mowing perspective.
Clyde's greenkeeping must have been different. Look, the contours are exceptional, to be fair, but from a maintenance point of view, some of them are really difficult. There's no two ways about it. 11 green, for example, there's certain directions of cut are just very difficult to get without scalping. Some of the mounding, again, visually, it's striking. But from a maintenance point of view, it's really difficult to maintain. There's areas in 14 fairway, 6 fairway, the second half. Near the green, there's a couple of mounds in that. We couldn't water it enough. Like, it doesn't matter what we try and do. And then, as I say, the mower goes over once. If it scalps it or takes anything, you're just down to bare sand again. So it's definitely challenging in terms of mowers even. Normal fairway mowers just didn't take the contour. When they went up over the ridges, they were lifting. So we had to go for the smaller 35, 50 mowers and that. They were just smaller, takes longer. And that while they do work, some of them are just really, really severe. There's another one, 4 fairway. As you walk onto it, there's that ridge through the middle. Again, every golfer walks the ridge. Yeah. Can't water it, can't keep grass on it. It's just so difficult. And again, there's a couple of pockets in. Again, they're striking. They're excellent, to be fair. You've front left of 17, front left of 18. There could be 50 divots a day in. The ball's faster to them. So it is, from a maintenance point of view, it is difficult. But again, that's the fine line you're trying to find, make it visually striking and really appealing and maintaining it. You know, I would like to see the ball maybe disperse a wee bit more than from into a small pocket. You know, on 18-1, if that pocket was maybe 4 or 5 times bigger.
You're talking right on the side, just short
of the bunker. Like, it's an area just a couple of meters where every ball filters to that pocket. Yeah. If that was slightly bigger, just make it. But it's easy to say that now. When they build it.
Get on to your neighbour.
It's the same there, you know, like, it's some of the contouring of the tees is exceptional, I think. Like, some people come here, you get greenkeepers come here and they hate it. The tees, they think they should be squared off and thing. I love it. I don't think the squared thing would fit in to how it flows and works. But some of the tee tops themselves could be slightly bigger. Like, an example would be the third. Yeah. You know, for a par 3, it's just, when you're thinking, 12,000 rounds of golf, it's quite small. Yeah. But again, that's me nitpicking from a greenkeeping point of view. But I think there should be a good line between greenkeeping and building. You know, here, this course was built with minimal irrigation. Yeah. You know, that was exceptional but risky.
Yeah. You overlapped a little bit with George?
Not in terms of working or anything. We shared certain machinery and that, and I came over, got on very well with George, to be fair. Yeah. But looking at it was exceptional to see. Being here from day one and watching it, what Angela, Clyde, Eric and all done was exceptional, to be fair. Tom. You know, there was some holes, we're watching the third being built and thinking, how did he walk around there and find that? 6, I found quite hard to see, because that was where the plant and all was, where all the work stuff was. Yeah. But whenever you see it now, it's exceptional to see how they done that.
Well, it looks like it's always been there.
Always, and if you had seen this where all the screen plants and everything was sitting just, yeah, it was exceptional to see. And as I say, I walked it before anything was done, and to see it now is incredible. And the way they've left it back, if you look at the old holes up around 16 and all, the sand scrapes have actually matured brilliantly. Yeah. I suppose, we did have to put in some marram around the edges, again with the winds. There was some areas we just found where the wind directions just kept blowing right onto fairways and that. Yeah. So we've just tried to tie them the edges in while keeping the visual.
It reminds me, I was out playing with Gareth Bryan, one of your colleagues on the operations team last year. He wasn't long up here. So we kind of ran into a bit of traffic on the 13th. So I told him to just abandon his stuff and we'd go for a wander. So we turned right halfway up the 13th. So I brought him up the top and he'd not been up there before. So obviously the old hole.
The old hole's going up. Yeah. So the old hole at the top now is now our nursery.
Yeah.
So we maintain that.
And then that horseshoe grain
yeah.
It's scalloped out of the dune. It's great to have those things still there.
That are still there. And they're still, as you'll see, some of the tee boxes that are still there. Yeah. Right of 11, there's old tees.
Yeah.
The old first tees are still, as you would look, left of 8 tee box on the mound. You can still see the flat area, which is great to have.
It just tells the story of the remnant golf course.
Of the old golf course. You play over the 18th.
Yeah.
From the 18th tee, you actually play over those dividers where the old holes going up and down.
Okay.
So there's 3 different sections to that fairway.
Yeah.
And that is the old.
Yeah. I'd say it was pretty tight. Like it's a great site for 18.
Yeah.
But 36, it just particularly up and down that bloody hill.
Yeah. It was a nice thing for me to actually do. She was from not far from me at home. Joanne O'Hare, who designed the original, was from Balbuffet. And during COVID, I took her.
Where's she now?
She's still in Balbuffet. Yeah. So she was up in County Down and that working at the time. She was the only woman designer ever in this country. But I took her down and she walked the whole golf course. Yeah. And she loved it, to be fair. She said, it's great to see the site get used fully. But she said when she was given her plot, she said it was just cram it in, basically. So she said it's great to see it fully utilised, basically. But it was nice to get her down to see it.
Of course it was. And you're a playing member here at Rosapenna.
Yeah.
How valuable do you feel that playing courses on an ongoing basis are in terms of, I guess, presenting the resort with the guest and member experience in mind?
I think it's huge. You can visually look at something and think it's good, but when you play on it, you see a total different thing completely from ball roll and that kind of thing. Like I think it's a huge part of greenkeeping. I think personally, like even going around yesterday morning, you'll never stop seeing things. And I think if you're seeing what the golfer's saying, at least then you can say, well, you're right or you're wrong, or I can see what you're saying. Especially in terms of setup and that, because you get the usual. Your flags are terrible. Your flags are terrible. But at least if you're playing it, you can go, well, no, it's actually all right.
I mean, it's an illegal pin. What's it doing there?
I get this argument all the time. But have you seen some of the flags I put out for the scrambles in the winter?
But that's not. But the fun, even that notion, it's not. It's not a thing.
There is nothing illegal. Like at the end of the day, she can play that temporary green that's on a fairway.
Yeah.
So you can put a flag anywhere you like. So
I mean, the fact that the PGA Tour have recommendations as to where. I mean, obviously, they can't be any more than X percentage and whatever else. We're not playing the PGA Tour, lads.
No. Like, if you've seen where I put
and it's also the same for everybody. Yeah. And invariably, you're complaining about your own course. You should know where to miss.
Exactly.
You may not be able to get there, but you should know that this is the wrong place.
Definitely not to go that side or whatever. Yeah, it's the same as I say about 16 yesterday. Yes, 16 was probably a bit difficult. But there was a window there, a decent sized window to get it into. That was also fine.
And you could use either the bank on the right, which I failed to do. I ended up.
You could use either one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough, but that was my point of looking at it. It's meant to be some of the best golfers. So it should be a challenge.
As I said, high level hackers. I'm going by someone the scores.
It definitely was through. But I think it has to be a challenge too in certain holes.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to that point. Golf is fun. Or it's meant to be fun. It's not always fun if you're playing. It's the same as St. Patrick's. One of the issues we get in St. Patrick's, going back to your slope and that. Some Americans come and think your greens are slow. But the whole concept where we try and put flags in some funky places, shall we call it?
Yeah.
And if the greens were rapid, that's just, you can't do it. Like, it's just totally stupid. Like.
Yeah.
So it depends what you're trying to do. You know, if you look at the 13s and 14s you hear in America, it's like a billiard table. It's a flat green. Where in St. Patrick's we have massive undulations. The front name is the same. So it is trying to find that balance. That's probably the one thing we do get in St. Patrick's. The greens can be slow.
Yeah.
But it's
For a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. Like if you want to put the flag in the flattest spot and just hunt it, fine. But is that what we're aiming at? Probably not.
No, probably not. Listen, with the Open back at Portrush in July and Rosapenna only a 2-hour spin from there, it would be remiss of me not to inquire about tee sheet availability. I think July is pretty chocker, as in booked out chocker. And obviously August, but specifically for the 2025 season in general. I'm assuming there is some availability at some point in time.
There is. May's exceptionally busy.
Yeah.
So it is. For whatever reason, it seems to be getting earlier. The bookings in May are massive. It's a great sign for the area, for the resort.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a small window. In general, it's 20-something weeks. It's all it's opened.
Yeah.
So it does have to be big numbers in those windows. But in terms of availability, it still is some, if you're looking for a round.
You'd be pleased to hear that we're nearing the end of the Inquisition. All of my guests, as you probably know, get asked the same final 2 questions. The first one relates to your bucket list golf courses. You might choose 4 or 5 and tell us what they are and why you've chosen them.
I want to go back to you'll say the name dropping. Cypress Point was one and I got lucky last year. The other one, I'd love to play Tarry, just purely just to see it and compare it to here to see how it compares. It looks incredible. Pine Valley. Just again, I think a lot of it comes back to the prestige, and you can't. It's really hard to get on, but I just love to see it and to see how it rates.
Surely you know somebody that knows somebody.
Look, I'm lucky that I can get on some very, very good golf courses. And hopefully one day I'll manage to get to them. Like New Zealand's a good track down the road. And if you were going there, you'd like to play them. I'd love to play Angela's new course, Pinehurst. She's done brilliant. And just to see how her elevations work with greenkeepers over there. Obviously then Augusta, everyone. A mate of mine actually played it there 3 days in a row, 2 weeks ago. And he just said it was incredible. Yeah, he stayed just off the par 3s in the cabins and that. He said it was just incredible to see.
I'm reminded of a story I heard Ran Morissette tell. And he obviously spent a good deal of time in Australia and would have Royal Melbourne as his arguably number 1 golf course around the world, certainly outside the States. And he recalled bumping into a number of Royal Melbourne members that were anxiously awaiting a trip to Augusta. And he goes, "What are you going over there for? You're members of the golf course that Augusta wants to be."
Yeah. The sandbelt in Australia looks incredible, to be fair.
It is.
It really does look it. And I like the way they do things. They do things their own way. In terms of the bunkers and the greens and all. It's just a total different thing. And I think they have probably got it perfect in terms of, you look at the ball bounce in them greens. It is literally like concrete. And I think they stick to their principle, basically. And you like it or everyone does seem to love it.
Well, it's practically the only, not practically the only defence, but it is a defence.
And it's a proper defence. And I think he will be a good golfer to play well on it.
But actually then it brings the ground game into play as well. Even though you're talking about what they call Santa Ana Cooch, which is Bermuda essentially. Yeah. But they can get it really, obviously fescue colours obviously help that as well. But yeah, it's you got to get down there.
Just to see it. Definitely Australia, New Zealand would be the one you would tie in.
Yeah.
All in one trip.
2 different holidays. Don't tell your wife.
Hear that, John?
He knows.
Listen, I don't think the wife would actually love it. She'd be mad to go.
Yeah. Is she golf?
She does, actually. She goes out. What I try to do there at least a couple of evenings a week. I try and play So I play the old course
Uh-huh.
as much as I can, obviously every weekend. Not every weekend, most weekends in the competition.
Yeah.
So at least once during the week, I'll play St. Patrick's or Sandy Hills.
Okay.
And so I take her with me in the evenings and we play. It's just, again, as you said, from a playing thing, I try to play it just to get around and see how it's doing, what it's doing. So I always try and play a loop of somewhere.
Yeah.
Very seldom I do it in the old course because I play my competition golf on it.
Listen, last question. Finally, you might recommend 2 golf-related books for anyone looking to augment their golfing libraries.
I would like people to read Practical Greenkeeper, basically, because it's just
Jim Arthur, yeah.
Jim Arthur, the greenkeeping book. I think it would open a lot of people's eyes just to...
And for anyone interested, that's available on the RNA shop online.
Yeah, and it's an excellent book, like, and it's... You can make greenkeeper as hard and difficult as you want, but they peel it back to make it quite simple in what you're trying to achieve, like, and that everything's not perfect. You know, so from a...
It's funny you mentioned him, actually. Sorry to interject.
No.
I was reviewing the minutes of my own golf club from, I think, the 70s or 80s, and Arthur was engaged as agronomist. And it would appear that the greenkeeper at the time didn't believe in what he was trying to sell. And funnily enough, a links golf course began to look like a parkland golf course. Over fertilization, over watering, not promoting.
Yeah, and that goes back to my thing of the irrigation lines. You know, it's just there's a line that has to be found. Like, you know, of how it was meant to be played. Yeah. And so one of Jim's students, understudies, was our agronomist, Gordon Irvine.
Okay.
And he's still...
It's Gordon Irvine of Askernish fame.
That's exactly who it is. Yeah. So he found Askernish.
Yeah.
And came here along with Tom. Gordon's very old school, shall we call it. He thinks it should be played as it was by him. Me and him have our arguments. I think there's a balance to be found between Askernish and your €300 green fee.
Yeah.
So I think there's a line.
Yeah. There shouldn't be, but there is.
There is, I think. Depending on the target market,
yeah,
I think there has to be. But it's great to have Gordon in general having Jim's beliefs and carrying them on. But as I say, from a maintenance point of view and what visitors are expecting, I think what Gordon wants me to do and what I have to provide don't fully intertwine. So we change some principles.
Compromise.
Which he knows about. We compromise, yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll give Gordon, to be fair to him, he sticks to his beliefs. He doesn't agree with them.
Yeah.
But he understands it.
That's book 1. Second book?
Probably Tom Coyne's A Postcard Ireland, to see all the golf course and what is out there.
Yeah.
Would be mine. I'd love to people, I think we're all mad, and it's probably very wrong of me to pick Pinehurst, Augusta, Pine Valley. When you look what we have in our own country, it's incredible. And if people went and seen them all, and went round them, yes, it can be costly in that, but what we have on our own doorstep's incredible. And I think if people knew, people probably don't know about some of them even.
Yeah, I guess we tend to, what's nearby is attainable, therefore you kind of get used to it and forget about it.
You forget about it. It's the same here. I think we have some people work here that probably don't appreciate what we have on our own doorstep.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not knocking them, it's just a mentality thing. Yeah. I think we probably had some, it's probably more the local people. The Ukrainian people are a bit different, but the locals probably never got just how good this piece of ground was, especially with what St. Patrick's has generated. I don't think people really expected that or fully appreciated. They haven't been to a lot of other golf courses, to be fair.
But then the other side of it is, if you're looking out your window over onto that vista, and you have been for the last 20 or 30 years, it
just comes natural.
It's just Carrigarten Downings.
Yeah, like for the last yesterday for the Scratch Open, or even for the last week and the next week coming, like, there's not many better places to be.
Don't worry, the rain is coming.
And when it does, it won't stop.
As sure as death or taxes.
I've seen a few greenkeepers saying, "Oh, we need rain." No, you will not hear me saying that. Definitely not. I think we had 310 days last year. Like, that's just unheard of. But that'll be the big side, I think, just from our own point of view.
Yeah.
Say the Jim Marathon ones are from a personal.
Yeah.
I think people might get a better understanding of what it is we're trying to.
And look, it's actually quite an accessible raid. You know, it's not jargon filled. It brings you through step by step. You know, it's about lane and main, and
it should.
Yeah,
because I think it goes back to going forward. I think golf and football as well, we have to become more sustainable the way that everything's going, the climates and things coming off the market.
Yeah.
I think we have to, and has books bring it back to basics.
Yeah. Listen, Chris, it's been my absolute pleasure to host you on the Firm and Fast Golf podcast. For anyone wishing to keep tabs on you, how should they go about that? Follow on the socials?
Socials, probably we post a small bit just on Twitter. It's all work related, basically, is the main, or X as the main one I use, to be fair.
Well, listen, continued success for the 2025 season, and thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for having me on.
No problem. Many thanks for tuning in. If you don't currently follow us on socials, you can do so as follows. On X, you can find us at Firm and Fast Golf. On Instagram, Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On Blue Sky, if you're that way inclined, the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On YouTube at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast, and indeed finally on Substack at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast, occasional newsletter. We favour to ask, if you're still with us, if you're enjoying the show, you might consider giving us a star rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really would be appreciated. Thanks again for listening.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.